and I am a narcissistic abuse recovery coach at queenbeing.com, where we help you to discover, understand, and overcome narcissistic abuse in toxic relationships. Hello, dude, trust me. Hello to whoever is here, and welcome. So let's talk today about boundaries. What are boundaries? More importantly, or maybe not more importantly, but let's let the focus be, why is it so hard to set those boundaries? Okay, what is a boundary? Basically, it's a personal line that one creates for oneself on how they will allow other people to treat them. It is a line that is also drawn for oneself that determines how much we will give and won't give. It can be, what are some other ideas of what a boundary is, if anyone has any ideas? But basically, it's anything that is your personal experience of yourself with the way you draw the line between yourself and other people. Okay. And it can be really difficult to set these things. It can be really difficult to say no. It can be a challenge to not let someone walk all over you, to not allow a love bombing even. It can be a challenge to speak, to consider how you're spoken to as important, and not allowing someone to speak to you in ways that are toxic to you, right? That's a boundary. So we know that in narcissistic abuse and in narcissistic abusive relationships, that there is a toxic boundary pushing that happens, that they are continually pushing your boundaries by doing things such as gaslighting and other tactics which push you up against your own boundary, and basically, doing things where you feel obliged to accommodate whatever it is the narcissist needs at the time, right? Let's see. Sweet Pink, I don't know if you had this planned or if you just felt drawn to it, but it's very good timing. Well, partially it's because I just started a boundaries group, a coaching group for boundaries, and it just started Monday. And then we will be doing a second group that's going to start next week, probably Fridays. I don't have the time yet, but I will get it by tomorrow. So it'll be two groups running at the same time. So I'm kind of hot on the boundaries trail. And what I notice, having done this group before, and what I notice with people is they know what a boundary is. They know where in their life they'd like to place them. Most people that come to coaching, at least, or that come to a support group, know where their boundaries are being pushed. They're very well aware of the fact that they are not able to set boundaries. Not only set them, but hold them in place or follow through with the boundaries that they do set. They're very clear with that. Most people, not everyone, but most people are. And so what is it that blocks you? What stops you from being able to say no? What stops you from being able to disallow people to speak to you in ways that are toxic? What is it? It's different for everyone, I'm sure. But so what I think a lot of it has to do with our belief system about ourselves, and our belief system about how we interplay with other people and what that means about ourselves. Does that make sense? That is what I see. And everyone's going to have a different answer there. I'm getting some replies here. Confidence. There's one. You just want to live, right? Which would, to me, be kind of like more of a laid back approach, but true. Feeling unworthy, defective, and bad. Let's see. I'm good at setting boundaries, just not holding the line. Right. That's part of it too, right? It's not just one thing, because setting boundaries is great. It's knowing what you need and setting the boundary, but then how do you hold that line? How do you hold the line? What's underneath what makes it difficult to hold the line? That's my question, because we can't change other people pushing our boundaries. We can't change toxic people being around, and the fact that they are going to push your boundaries if they are around you, or even just life situation. What happens is this pattern's been set up so that now even people in our life who aren't toxic don't have any respect for your boundaries, right? Because you've never set them, or they've been so mushy that people Just kind of people expect you to behave the way you always behave. And if the way you always behave is the person that says yes to everything, well, then why wouldn't they think you're the person that says yes to anything? So then you end up with toxic patterns in your life that are nobody's fault, but this crazy pattern of frustrating pattern, really, of the lack of boundaries due to many reasons, but one of them, the abuse. So let's talk about what we can do here. I've had a hard time holding the line when it comes to difficult things that my family has to go through. I was raised to put others always before myself. Yeah. You see these beliefs that are, can you hear how they're beliefs about ourself and their beliefs about how we should and shouldn't interact in the world? Guilt, shame, lack of confidence, obligation to others, which is what I'm hearing in the family one. Obligation, things like that are focused on the external, focused on other people rather than focused on including yourself in the equation. I'm not saying we have to become, such hard line boundary setters that all we think about is ourself. That would be the opposite of what we want, right? Because most of us like to help and please and do things for other people. However, if we don't have clear boundaries, where's the self-care? It is gone. Right? This is like a huge, major self-care thing, to learn to set boundaries and to hold them. So we set the boundary for ourselves. If we have a limiting belief or programming, it holds us back, right? It holds us back and locked into a state of no boundaries or limited boundaries or very loose boundaries. So some of the things that I wrote down here that people might be feeling that are other than confidence, feeling unworthy and defective. I don't deserve whatever it is. I owe it to the other person, an obligation. I need to be responsible. I'm obliged. I'm responsible for that person. I hear this a lot, this one, that people feel responsible for the narcissist. They feel responsible for everybody else's behavior. Selfish, that's a good one. It's selfish. I'm not enough. I don't deserve this. I don't deserve the life I want. I'm not worthy of that life. So why, and it's not even when I say these things, it can feel like, oh, that's just really just self-pity. It really isn't. These are deep beliefs. These are core beliefs and deep beliefs for a lot of people that have nothing to do with martyrdom or feeling sorry for yourself. They are truly what someone believes inside about themselves, and they do everything they can to cover it up. And the way they cover it up is by having no boundaries and saying yes to everybody else, right? So you see how it's a trap, kind of. I hate to say this, but it's a bit of self-gaslighting, right? To make yourself hide from the truth of I feel unworthy by doing things for other people. And when what we can do is work on the belief so that the boundaries can get stronger. Does that make sense? No one taught me, this is dude, trust me, no one taught me that I shouldn't mix my finances with someone I love. I've given and given. Yes, narcs are black holes that suck finances and resources. Nothing anyone gives will be enough for them. And you're right. It's the same across the board. Finances, love, affection, sex, they take. That's right. And then the boundaries, you can see where in a healthy relationship, you can give, like a healthy relationship that is reciprocal. You can give and give and give, and the other person can give and give and give. And no boundary need be crossed. You can talk about, you know what, that doesn't feel right that I should give you money for that. And the other person will say, yeah, you're right. I should be paying for that myself or whatever. You can talk about it when it's not a narcissist. When it's a narcissistic person, it's all giving in all areas. So the boundaries are always being pushed and crossed. And that is where it's programmed into us from the abuse to continually do this. Even when you have the freedom and you are away, like when you finally realize you're free and you're away, it'll creep up in other areas for a lot of people. So got to watch what these beliefs are underneath them, I think, to prepare yourself to learn to set those boundaries. Because if you can go at something from the inside like that, like really working on your own beliefs and what you believe about yourself and where that belief came from, even, it doesn't matter as much where it came from as it does what it is, I think, because you're living in the present time, not the past. So let's work forward, right? So that we can move through this and learn to set these boundaries.
Okay, I feel like self-pity, and that's how I ran away from reality. Right. I convinced myself it wasn't that bad. Right. And that goes back to the other day's topic of the cognitive dissonance and the abuse amnesia, where we convince ourselves because it's easier to believe the good than it is the bad. And that's the short version, but go watch that video if you haven't and see how that applies here, because it all goes together. All of this stuff ties together because the abuse is one big, like, organic mechanism, isn't it? It's like one big thing that's a whole lot of little things mushed together that create all of these issues in our lives. But the thing is, I think going toward the beliefs, learning to see what it is you believe and working on those beliefs to change them changes a lot. You change the inside, the outside follows. Okay. And I've said this before, and people argue that their outside's still bad. Yeah, it's not going to be perfect, but the point is how you experience the outside changes. And as that changes, so is how your life can flow, because you have more possibility when you are not locked in a negative or self-limiting belief, right? That I think we can prove that to ourselves quickly just by looking at a simple belief. Anyway, so other things people might feel when they can't set boundaries is that it gives them purpose. Okay, it gives them purpose to be needed in other people's lives. That's a hard one to let go of. Can you imagine, like, if you don't try to fix other people and fix what's going on and be the one that people go to, and how would you feel needed? How would you feel useful? What kind of belief is that set up in your life that you need to be someone for other people in order to be a someone? That is absolutely not, it's not a fact. Okay, it's a belief. And this is where self-worth comes in. So changing your beliefs to work toward better self-worth and self-love can help you to work on this people-pleasing sort of needing to fix other people in order to feel your own good, right? Your own worth, your own value. Yes, Jack Lumen, my schedule is going to be chaotic. I'm sorry about that. I have no way of controlling the schedule for this right now, but I'm here. So there we go. Hello, Nikki Ann. I'm doing my best here with the scheduling. And let's see. Okay, anyway, let's keep going. So another thing that people often say when I ask them or when they are speaking other places about boundaries, about why they do it. Why do you do this for them? Why do you drive them all over town when you have your own things to do? Why do you, because they fear disappointing the other person. It's a little different than the others that we talked about. That's a little bit more on the line of kind of perfectionism, right? Where you fear letting other people down. And therefore, you're not the perfect, whatever it is they need you to be, right? Let's see. Assuming that others will be mad at you if you say no. That's another kind of fear, right? And really, really, really worrying what other people think. Like truly, deeply worrying what other people think about every move you make. Those are huge blocks to being able to set boundaries. Can you see how that would be an issue, right? So another one might be, I think, was it Dude Trust Me that said this? He said, just live life, avoidance of conflict. That's kind of what I heard in that just live life. If we're talking about it as a belief that needs changing, just live life can be a great belief too. Just live your life can be a laid back kind of great belief for someone to have. But at the same time, it can also be avoidance of conflict, which, yeah, we want to avoid conflict. Who wants, well, some people want conflict, but most people don't want conflict. Many people don't want conflict, and many people fear it. And many people are so sensitive and so deeply experience their emotions so close to the surface, if that makes sense. They experience their emotions very sensitively, so that conflict is actually an assault to their psyche. Conflict is painful to a lot of people. And
the fear of conflict being there when there is a boundary set. Imagine that belief. How do you set a boundary if you're afraid of conflict in that regard? If when you feel conflict, when you feel someone angry, or there actually is conflict, that it is actually an assault to your psyche, right? It actually is just too much, overwhelm. So, yep. Okay. Conflict is painful, isn't it? For a lot of people, conflict is really painful. And a lot of people are really either avoid it or they fawn in order. So they'll either avoid it and not set boundaries by being, well, there's different ways of not setting boundaries. I guess we can talk about that too. But either avoidance or a fearful sort of fawning approach, right? And some people just don't see the importance of boundaries. They have yet to discover how important it is to be able to have them, right? What else do I have here? I have just a little bit more. Fear of being seen as selfish. We talked about that a little bit. And the fear of speaking one's mind. This is back to the confidence. The fear of speaking your own mind. The fear of lacking the self-initiation, the self-worth to be able to speak what's on your mind and feel confident in what you're saying. It's like the utter shame and embarrassment of speaking when you don't feel confident about what you're saying, or when you feel like what you said isn't worth anything. And again, back to self-worth. So you can see that all of these beliefs are, I think, major blocks for being able to set boundaries and being able to hold boundaries. And what happens with all of this, and another one that comes from the abuse, is no longer being able to know your own mind. So maybe it's not that you are afraid to say what's on your mind. You actually don't even know what you believe or feel or think. Is that familiar to anyone? It's like how can you set a boundary if you don't know what you feel? How can you set a boundary if you don't know what your opinion is, or what you think, or what you like, or what you want? You really can't. I don't like that word. It's really, at that point, it becomes a giant mountain to climb to be able to set a boundary, because it's a huge block. So I'm going to read this. Let's see. Who asked a question? Nikki. I'm not sure if this was addressed before I got here. If not, what is the best way to set a boundary when you know you can help someone, but they're energy vampires who trigger you? Well, do they want your help? Number one, what do they need? What do they want? Who are they to you? What would it help the situation? What is the purpose for helping them? If they're energy vampires and they're triggering you, sometimes the boundary of all of the stuff I'm talking about here, self-care comes first. And there's plenty of people. I mean, think about how it would feel to be in a position of being like someone like, say, a life coach, and you're out in life and you're talking to people and you're just yourself and you're doing your life, and you're doing your thing, and you see stuff going on all around you all day long where people are just bouncing off their own belief systems and they're bouncing off their own issues at one another. And you could step in there and fix it, but that situation would drain you completely of life, right? It's not your place. It's not your, it's knowing your place. If it's not your place, then you step out, Nikki, and if it is your place, then and they've asked for help, then you have to be very careful, because your energy and your healing is where your focus needs to be. And sometimes you direct that person to somebody who does it for a living, or you direct them to resources, right? And you let them figure it out for themselves. The truth is, we can only help people see what they need for themselves, right? Okay, you're saying this woman I met in a face-to-face support group, she's very negative about everything. I want to give her support, but she makes it hard for me. That could be your assumption that she is able to be helped by you. And I don't mean that in a cruel or mean or anything way. I totally feel your desire to help. And there's a point in recovery where we want to help everyone. We want everyone to feel so much better because we feel better, or we're kind and we're good with people. And the truth is, people have to step up and do their own work. They have to step up and do their own healing. No one can heal for someone else, no matter how much love and care we give to them. We can't make them heal. It's an active process. If you've noticed for yourself, this healing is super active. It's not something that we passively sit by and let people fill us up with love and goodness and it gets all better. Right? So in that case, I would step out. I wouldn't offer more than what's being offered in the moment. She says my stories make her realize things from her own relationship. I feel bad directing her elsewhere. So how can you tell your stories in a public way, since you're in a public group, right, without it being a drain for you? You need to protect your own energy here, Nikki, because you're the one doing the work. You're doing the work to heal yourself. She has to do her work to heal herself. I'm glad that the stories help. Hearing other people's stories is very validating for people. And so that's why we tell them, right? It's why we talk about it so much. We're not venting. We're not complaining. We're not feeding off the negative energy that we feel from these stories. What we're doing is we're validating one another. So that validation is important. I think, Nikki, you may have already helped her. You may have already taken it as far as you can take it. Does that make sense? And then where's the boundary in there for you? If you feel yourself being drained, what do you need? And that's where you set the boundary. Does that make sense? How do you stay confident? Hello, Anna. How do you stay confident after setting a boundary? Oh, you just let yourself know it's going to feel horrible. It's going to feel horrible at first. Setting a boundary does not feel like the best thing in the world. I'm super confident. This is great. I totally respect myself now. Look at me go. It doesn't necessarily feel like that. It can have all the yucky feelings of the belief that's holding you from wanting to set that boundary in play. And so what you do is pay attention to that belief that's coming up and work with that. And you work with whatever it is that comes up. And without knowing, I'll just give a quick example of something. And this is where, this is a tricky one to answer thoroughly as much as I want to, but it is something that in the coaching group that we do over and over and over. Okay. These are the kind of questions that come up. And so without specifics, I would say something like, if you realize you are a people pleaser, and when you set that boundary, you feel really uncomfortable because you want to step in and help, or like Nikki's saying, you feel really bad because you feel guilty, almost bad because you feel an obligation to help this other person. So you work on that obligation. Where is your true obligation? It's to your own healing right now. It's to, in Nikki's situation, it's to her own healing. And her obligation to other survivors is like a secondary obligation. It's not even an obligation, it's a gift. And you can only give that gift when you have the energy and the amount of whatever it is you have to give it. And you have to be careful where you're giving it, right? So you look at the picture and then you look at your own belief and you work with the limiting belief that's there. Does that make sense? And understand it doesn't feel good right away. It doesn't. If you don't feel the thing that makes you uncomfortable when you're setting boundaries, how are you going to fix the problem of it being difficult to set boundaries? So don't run away from that secondary discomfort, if that makes sense. Don't run away from it. Just listen to it. And then you have something to work with. Does that make sense? Okay. It does make sense. She won't stop calling me. I think I have to set, okay, there's a good hard line. I can only talk on the phone a couple times a week, and, it's difficult to answer your call. I'm sorry if I don't reply. And that's real, right? That's real. Whatever is honest and real and feels right to you, we've been taught through the gaslighting of the narcissist. I'm really getting into the camera. Sorry. We've been taught by the gaslighting from the narcissistic abuse that what we experience as real is not real. What our emotions are not what we're supposed to be feeling, that they're wrong, or we're wrong for what we're feeling, and it's all mixed up and it's all confusing. So you get back into the feeling what you feel when you're going through something like this, like trying to set a boundary, and you realize that that's true. I do feel drained. That's true. I don't have time for this situation. This isn't mine to take on. I'm sorry she feels bad, but I can only give as much as I can, as much as I'm willing to give, and as much as I'm able to give. And that's it. So, and that's all I have on that. It's more of a self-doubt that you feel. Well, then you work on that self-doubt. You let yourself feel it as you're setting the boundary, and work toward, what is it saying to you? What are you telling yourself? The beliefs that the dialogue that's going on in your head, you can work on changing that. Pattern interrupt it. Give it a new voice, so that you give yourself a different experience of what setting a boundary feels like. Does that make sense? Lise this is Dude Trust Me, is self-care an action that shows myself my own worth? Whether it's a nice bath, massage, haircut, I show myself my worth when other people's actions haven't. Yes, it is. Self-care to me is taking care of self. Simple, simple, simple. It literally is care for self. And it's happening all the time in your day. You just aren't applying, not you, but a person might not be applying intention behind it. So all day long, you're taking care of yourself. You're eating, you're showering, you're, going through your day, you're getting dressed, you're doing your stuff. But if you're doing it without any intention, then you're missing an opportunity to add something towards your day that can lend towards your self-worth. Does that make sense? Like just getting dressed with a little bit of care. Maybe like one person said he lays his clothes out the night before work. It makes him feel like someone cares about him when he wakes up and they're right there. And so first thing in the morning when he goes to get dressed, he feels cared about, and he's the one that did it. So that's self-care. So yes, what you said, and that was a long version of an explanation for that. Nikki Ann says it makes sense. I've never put myself first. So this is new territory. Great topic for today, isn't it? It's new territory, and it will stay uncomfortable, and it'll stay awkward for a while. And that's okay, because what you're doing is you are in new territory. What we're creating here are little maps, right? These videos and coaching and support groups and all of that are maps for how to navigate this new territory. So there's lots of support out there. So it's okay to feel uncomfortable. If you went to some foreign country where you didn't speak the language and you weren't properly dressed for the climate and the social garb that they wear, then you might feel awkward. That's what it is. You're in a foreign land, and it's, then you go and you ask for help. This is what you're doing. So it's good. Let's see. Did I miss anybody? Lisa had to go no contact with my family member for the sake of my mental health. How are you doing with that? How is that for you? Okay. Okay. What did I miss? Did I miss any questions on this? I've got about 10 more minutes. I have a short day. I had a weird scheduling day. I apologize. Let's see. Looking to see if anything I missed. Oh, Robin, I missed yours. Sorry about that. Hello, Robin. I feel like there's no way in 2019 to keep no contact. New emails, numbers, messages, emails come in. Yeah, you mean in this day and age, kids these days, right? Even if there is not a response from me, it sets me back. Is there such a thing as a boundary with a narc? No. Sorry. But there is such a thing as a boundary with oneself. And you named it right there, even if there is no response from me. So what you can do is work on your own internal boundaries for yourself, because that's another thing, is it's not just placing boundaries with other people, it's placing boundaries within ourselves for how we speak to ourselves, how we they kind of are like boundaries, right? It's how we speak to ourselves, how willing we are to follow that trigger all the way into the drama that it's creating. It's going to trigger you, but after a while, when it keeps happening, there's a point at which you can create a line inside yourself and not let it in, and not let it in through, difficult. It's difficult. There's, a lot of ways that you can look at that, but depending how it affects you, when I have a trigger, I get instant anxiety. Even now, right? I get instant anxiety. I get, it's physiological. So that feels like there's nothing I can do. It feels out of control. It feels like I get hot, I get dizzy, my stomach hurts, my head spins, my eyes get intense. And the thoughts are not even clear. They're just like darting around thoughts because there's no actual thought and there's actually no emotion that goes with it. It's like pit of the stomach. It feels like falling in an elevator feeling. You know what I'm talking about, right? If you've ever experienced this from a trigger. So what can I do in that case? If these triggers are going to keep happening, if it's Hoovers or whatever it is that are going to keep happening, what can I do? Yes, instant anxiety, shaky, palms sweaty, like the whole thing. It happens in an instant, and it feels like there's nothing you can do. I'm here to tell you, they last about 5 minutes, and then the adrenaline takes about a half an hour to wear off for me now. Okay, so it's possible. It's possible for this highly anxious girl to get through it. You can get through it too. It's what I do is I bring in the fact of the situation. Instead of reacting to my emotions in my body, I say, oh, that is, yeah, of course that's happening. Of course, there's no boundaries there. Why would they not email me? Of course they emailed me again, and then delete. There, took action. So you slow it down, you see, instead of letting it all rush fast and reacting and getting caught up in your emotional reaction, and it's separating all these parts and then realizing, okay, now I need to calm my body just a little bit because what happens is if we're pumped full of adrenaline, when you have a trigger, you're just like an adrenaline surge. And when you have that adrenaline surge, what do you do with adrenaline? That's meant to make you run. Right? It's meant to make you flee from danger or jump to action or whatever. It's not meant for you to sit there and spin in your head about something. So separating it out and then realizing that you need to calm down your body, do some deep breathing, put the trigger away. If it's on your phone, just stick your phone somewhere else for a few minutes and look off into the distance, get some perspective on your life. Come back and orient yourself to where you are, things like that. Like I'm sitting in my car, I'm looking out the window, whatever it is. And then at that point, I realize I'm still pumped full of adrenaline and I get busy and I go do something, take a walk, go clean the kitchen, whatever it is, whatever it is that you can do for 10, 15 minutes. And then I say, okay, now this adrenaline's mine. Now I get to use it. No more of this. I'm going to sink back into the trauma. Does that make sense? And it's practice. That was a long answer, but there you go. Let's see, at least. But I know that my reasons for setting the boundary are very valid and serious. This was after putting up with many times being emotionally abused. You mean the no contact boundary? Did I miss something? Oh, first I was very anxious, but now I feel at peace. Yes. That's good. Jack Lumen says, I get it. I've had to talk myself through the emotional flashback, panic, anxiety, tell myself what it is, review my plans. It still hurts, but it works. It does work. Yeah. Okay. I do feel some power when I do not react, but it sits in my belly for a bit. Okay, yeah, so notice it. Tell your belly that you got this. It's okay. That's what you do. You get sick when I have these things. I know. I just talk to myself. But really, I think it helps because what you're doing when you're doing that is separating out the emotion from it. And the problem is if we hook into the emotion, that emotion's going to take you on a ride. And the thoughts are going to follow it. And the thoughts and the emotions are like whispering together. And then your body's like, oh, poor me. And it has to go with it. And then you're just off on the trigger. So separating it out, I think it helps. Okay. All right. Anything else about boundaries before we are done here today, you guys? Any more questions? There's some great questions you guys are asking. Thank you. Any more before we go? Trying to think of anything that's come up that relates to this with boundaries and setting boundaries. How do you say no? like this, no. Or, you know what? No. It depends on the situation. How you say no is you just say no. You realize, well, you can weigh it. Is this something I want to do? Is this something I wish to do? Is this something that serves both the other person and myself? Am I the only person that can do this truly? Like sometimes it's not that we have to say no to everything and have hard boundaries everywhere, but it's setting these boundaries when we want to and being able to say no when we wish to, right? So looking at the situation a little more clearly, so if you're looking at a situation like from your belief system, what was yours? Avoidance? I'm just putting that on you. I don't know what it really is, but yeah, the avoidance of conflict. So if we're looking at it from a belief system of avoidance of conflict, whatever if that speaks to you, whatever comes up for you when you think about saying no, oh my gosh, they're going to be so mad, and I don't want to deal with that. I don't want to deal with them getting all bent out of shape and then, putting it all on me that I'm this and I'm that because I said no, blah, blah, blah. I don't want to deal with that. You get into this, if you get into this avoidant mode, and so then no becomes impossible because you've talked yourself all the way back through it. But if you look at the situation instead, wait a minute, they have a car, they have time, they can go pick up that thing. There's absolutely no reason they need me to do this. It doesn't matter whether there's conflict or not. Does that make sense? It's like divide the two, keep them separate. And then go back to realizing you're going to feel uncomfortable if there's conflict or whatever your belief is. You're going to feel uncomfortable when it comes up. And that's when you start, and you can work on yourself. After the situation, it's over, placed your boundary and the discomfort comes up. That's when you can work on changing your own beliefs. How did I put this to a group? I said, when we are in a limiting belief, when we're in a limiting belief situation, okay, I'm going to get silly here. When we're in a situation where we are tied to a limiting belief and it's preventing us from feeling like we have an option, we are like this close to it, right? We are so close to that belief. When we get some space around it, all this space around it gives us options. Does that make sense? It's perspective. If your perspective is like right up in its face, then how can you see a way out? So stepping back away from it so that you realize it's a belief and you start working on that belief gives you some perspective on the problem. And the problem isn't the boundary sometimes. It's the fact that you feel a certain thing around why you can't set that boundary. Does that make sense? All right. Avoidance mode. That's me. Yep. I mean, I think it's a lot of us in certain points, and we can have multiple beliefs. That's the other thing, is multiple beliefs will come up around the boundaries, and that's okay. You just listen to yourself and validate it, and don't run away from it. Just work with how to change those beliefs. All right. Okay. I hope that helped. And okay. Anything else before I go? Oh, hello, Frankendoll. It's okay. We're talking about boundaries. Did you have any questions about boundaries before I am ending here? I have to go in just a moment. How can we get coaching on building better boundaries? Codependency. Excuse me. Well, I have a group that is on Mondays at 6. It started this Monday, so there's 3 left. I also am going to start a second group that'll start next Friday. I don't have the time yet. It'll be evening Pacific time around 5 or 6. I'm not sure which. I haven't had a chance to hang out at all today with my calendar. So there'll be a coaching group then. Those are, excuse me. Okay, those are $60 for 4 weeks, so it's like $15 a week, and they run an hour, and so it's video chat back and forth, however many people are in the group, and each person gets their time to speak personally about what's going on for them. But also, what's great with that is what's included is a Facebook Messenger group, and I know not everyone's on there, but that's where it's hosted right now because that's where I have to host it. So, and within that group, the daily stuff that comes up, questions can be asked and I answer there too. So it's not just the 1 hour, it's kind of ongoing. And anyone who's been in groups can chime in with what it's like. So I will post the link to that. I'll post the link to that if you check back later and look into the, what is it called? Not the comments here, not the chat, but the main section where you describe. What's it called? Down below. Look down below. Later on, I'll post it as soon as I can, the link to the group. Okay. And if you want to do the 3 weeks that are left, if anyone wants to do that, you need to email me, coachlisec@gmail.com, and I can get you in that way for 3 weeks. That's the Monday group. All right. Description. Thank you. You see, I get the big words all mixed up right now. I must be hitting 40 minutes. What I say every time. That's when my brain goes. I need to pay attention to that. Okay. Let's see. Anything else here? Lise, I would like to learn more about boundaries. Okay. Well, that's good information. You know what? Also, after this, I'll probably, I will shorten this down to a shorter video like I've been doing so that there's a little bit easier to watch if you just want, to see the stuff we're talking about here. And leave comments in any video that I have of any questions you have, and I will continue talking on the topic if it's enough for me to talk about. I do my best. There's so many topics out there, right? Let's see. I've noticed that setting boundaries is throwing everyone off in my life. Ooh, that's a good one. It will set everyone off. It'll throw everyone off because people expect you, even the non-narcs, people will expect you to be who they see you as and who you are. And they're going to say, you've changed. And I love that little meme that's going around with the worm and the butterfly. You've changed. And the butterfly says you're supposed to. So yeah, that's the way it goes. And people who are healthy for you in your life, emotionally safe people, want you to grow. So while it might be uncomfortable for them as you are changing, it should level out at some point with healthy people. With people who are not healthy, they will continue to push those boundaries. And that's one way you know if someone's emotionally safe for you in your life or for that particular situation in your life. Some people can just be unsafe in certain situations, like they're not good with certain things. And so you don't go to them with those things. It doesn't make them toxic necessarily. It just makes them not good at that thing. But it does make people uncomfortable when you change, and especially when you become assertive in any way. People want us to be people pleasers forever so that they can get their needs met because they're used to getting them met through you. So keep it up, Frankendoll, and let it be uncomfortable. Just be kind with your boundaries. Sometimes we're a little rough with our boundary setting at first. So just pay attention to how you're setting them. Pay attention to yourself. See where you can soften or not soften. It's up to you. These are your boundaries and you get to set them. So, do we have to set boundaries? Why are you saying sorry, Nikki Ann? Don't say sorry. It's okay. Do we have to set boundaries to the person, or is it okay to put the boundary to just put a boundary into the effect with a friend, not an arc? Do we have to do you have to say, I'm setting a boundary now? You can just put it into play. You just put it into effect. And okay, here's the thing with boundaries. If you're trying to set a boundary with someone, and this is for Frankendoll too, for what you were saying, how people get upset. When we're setting a boundary with someone that is in our life, they're a good person, they're not narcissistic, they're not toxic, they're just, and say our boundary is like way out here, it's a hard no. Sometimes increasing incrementally toward that hard no, or sometimes baby steps toward the finish line is what I'm saying. Sometimes it's a hard no and that is it. And sometimes it's okay to work your way up toward the end goal boundary. Does that make sense? So that you're not just throwing it at people and confusing them, right? I'm referring to the woman in my group. She calls me constantly. Oh, in that case, she's not in your life. She's a woman from a support group who is trying to help her own life through you. Okay. So in a sense, yes, for that person, she may not be narcissist, but her behavior towards you is toxic if she's doing that. right? Even if she doesn't mean to. And even if she's a good person, it's still not, it's too much. So you can gently tell her. I mean, if it were me, and you can do whatever you want, but if it were me, I would set a line and say, hey, you know, I don't have a whole lot of time in the day for phone calls. I've loved talking to you. It's great, but I have to limit them. So, you know, if I don't answer, I probably won't reply for a few days, and it's nothing to do with you. I'm just not able to be, I'm not able to be that available. Does that make sense? It's, believe me, it's something we have to do all the time with people that are, they're hurting, they're sad, they're scared. What they also have to learn is self-reliance, and it's not your responsibility. They need to focus on their own healing and not be draining you from yours. So yeah, it's okay. If, you know, if she seems in a state of crisis, of course, you know, then she needs a crisis counselor, not a, you know what I'm saying? I don't know what her situation is, but if it's just the constant need because she needs someone in her life, you get to set that boundary. That's too much. And finding gentle ways to say it. Anyway, okay. I get you. Good. Because I like your name too. Well, let's see. Nikki Ann is a warrior, by the way. So strong in doing the work. Love you, girl. Nikki Ann is a warrior. You are all amazing. You're all doing the work. Okay. Did I miss anything? Da-da-da-da. Okay. I think we got it. Anything else on boundaries? Leave it in the comments. This is a good topic. We can talk about it again sooner than later because I think it's important. And this was just one idea about boundaries, completely different from the setting of boundaries themselves, but what we can do for ourselves. And we can talk more about that too, how to implement changing belief systems so that we have the strength to have good, healthy boundaries in our life. Okay. So thank you. Again, my name is Lise Colucci, and I am one of the coaches at queenbeing.com, and I appreciate you being here. I will see you next time. You guys take care, and I wish you well on your healing journey. Hit subscribe if you enjoyed this. Thumbs up. See you later. Bye-bye.